how many people. We can start.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I will start with the introductions while I can see that people are slowly streaming in. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining our webinar this morning on the Aspirant Prosecutor program, particularly focusing on the intake for 2023. My name is Bulelwa Makeke. I'm the head of communications at the NPA. I will introduce the panel, but before I do so, I just need to be clear about how we're going to conduct the webinar today, because there are so many people that will be engaging. We will ask people who have questions to write them on the Q&A tab. So please write on the Q&A and not on the chat group, so that we can manage all the conversations in one place. And without much further ado, then I start with my introductions. We have on the panel Advocate Rodney de Kock. Advocate Rodney de Kock is the Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions, who is responsible for the National Prosecution Service, the NPS. As you can tell from the name, the NPS is that unit that actually encompasses all prosecutions, the whole service, whether it's general prosecutions or whether it's specialist prosecutions, all these capabilities fall within the NPS. And therefore, Advocate de Kock is overall responsible for the Aspirant Prosecutor program, as well as for everything that happens within the NPS. And then I have Advocate Daphne Rangaga. Please show your face, Advocate. Yes, Advocate Daphne Rangaga, I think, is a very familiar name with the Aspirant Prosecutor program. We have been running the program for a few years now, and I think people kind of know the name, and here's the face now. Advocate Rangaga is actually responsible for the program and everything that goes into it, obviously working with the leadership of the NPA. So to make sure that you get the proper training that you need to be the best prosecutor, that is what Daphne Rangaga is responsible for. And then we have Ms. Marcia Malope, who is the acting head of HR. And so because we call this webinar to help with a lot of questions that are coming up around, what are the proper rules and instructions on your applications, we are here to help you in that regard, to make sure that when you submit your application, you do it properly, you do it correctly, so that you don't get disqualified and you know exactly what's required of you in terms of that. So with all those dispensed with, I will actually start having a conversation with Advocate de Kock, just to go over really what the Aspirant Prosecutor or how it fits into the organization as a whole. And maybe we can start by you, Advocate de Kock, telling us generally, how does the program fit into the capacitation strategy of the NPA? Please unmute yourself. Yep.
Thank you very much, Program Director, and good morning to all the colleagues who are on this platform and the panelists who are on the platform. Good morning also to all the aspiring prosecutors and aspirant prosecutors who have joined us today to talk about the Aspirant Prosecutor program. So the Aspirant Prosecutor program is an important part of the functioning of the prosecution service in South Africa, because this is the program that introduces young graduates and others into the prosecution service, and ultimately with the objective of becoming fully fledged prosecutors in South Africa. More and more, the prosecution are not at the moment advertising the entry-level prosecution posts in the NPA, and the aspirant prosecutors who are then appointed and who successfully complete the program are then largely absorbed into the entry-level posts of the organization. So from a capacitation point of view, this is the start of becoming a prosecutor in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And, you know, tying in with that, obviously the organization has to have a particular type of quality of a prosecutor that we would like to have in the organization. Please talk to us, Advocate de Kock, about, you know, linking up the quality of a prosecutor with what is required of a prosecutor. You know, what is the role of a prosecutor and what is the responsibility of a prosecutor? Unmute, Advocate de Kock.
I'd like to start with the United Nations guidelines on the role of the prosecutor. And then one can immediately see that prosecutors have an international standing in all countries. And so one of the first areas that they talk about are the qualifications, the selection, and the training of prosecutors in this guideline. And the first point they make is that persons selected as prosecutors shall be individuals of integrity and ability with the appropriate training and qualifications. So I think that encompasses very nicely what is really required of a prosecutor in any jurisdiction, including South Africa, and in any democratic jurisdiction like in the Constitution. And so you want individuals who are dedicated to upholding the rule of law in the country. You want individuals with a particular integrity and with the ability to be able to practice what they have studied at university and through their legal qualifications, to really put that into practice. And then fundamentally, a prosecutor's role is to represent the victims of crime in courts in our country. So when you aspire to be a prosecutor, a large part of what you will be doing in your career will be to represent victims of crime in courts. And I think that is the most exciting part of being a prosecutor. And it's a very rewarding profession because you are helping people who have been victims of crime. And in the prosecution in South Africa, and particularly in the MPA, we put the victims of crime at the center of what we do. So ours is a service-related profession, and we serve people, and we ensure that there's justice for victims of crime in our society.
Advocate de Kock, there's an important thing about, you know, what we expect of a prosecutor in terms of just the quality, the values that they must espouse, which must tie in with the values of the organization. So things like the ethical overview, ethics, the accountability that a prosecutor has in terms of the cases that they deal with. Can you just talk us very briefly through that?
Thank you for that question. So the MPA have 4 key values that we are rebuilding the organization on. We know that the MPA have been through very trying times over the last 10 years. And since the appointment of the new national director about 3 years ago, the MPA has been in a phase of reinforcing the appropriate values and the expected conduct of each and every member of this organization. And so underpinning all of that is what we refer to as the values that are important to the organization. And there are 4 key ones in this rebuilding phase that we talk about. The first is independence. So when we are prosecutors, no matter what level we are operating at, whether we are operating at the level of the national director or we are operating in a district court as a prosecutor of first instance. Independence in terms of how we do our work is very important. And so prosecutors must not be influenced by any outside considerations. We are only influenced by the law, and we are influenced by the evidence that we are presented to us, so that we make our decisions independently. Of course, subject to the arrangements that you have within the organization in terms of supervision. The second one is professionalism. I don't need to dwell too much on professionalism, but we all understand that as lawyers, we need to be professional, and that there are codes of conduct that are expected of lawyers generally as being part of the legal profession, but then in particular in the prosecution, and we'll hear a bit more about this later, in terms of your ethical responsibilities. Prosecutors have to conduct themselves in a professional way. The third is accountability. So we make ourselves accountable for our decision making, and we make ourselves accountable for what we do as prosecutors. And so accountability is very important. So in other words, we can't just make decisions that are arbitrary or make decisions without explaining them. And when we are accountable to society at large, to the members of the public, and of course to Parliament and to other institutions relevant in our country in terms of our constitution. And the last one is credibility. So in order for us to be an effective organization and institution, we need to have credibility in the eyes of society and in the eyes of the public. And so that's important in the rebuilding phase that we are in. We do not want people to question the manner in which we do our work, or why we do our work, or are we influenced by any outside considerations. And so credibility as a prosecutor at an individual level is very, very important, because it starts with prosecutors at an individual level. So as an aspirant prosecutor, or as a prosecutor once appointed into the MPA, your credibility is of utmost importance, because that credibility then will also inform the credibility of the organization as a whole. So I think, Program Director, those are the four: independence, professionalism, accountability, and credibility.
Thank you, Advocate de Kock. And that was important because prosecutions, especially, you know, in the current times, there are sometimes, you know, those questions about the integrity of the decisions that are being made. And so we must always be on guard in terms of what this organization stands for. And of course, an organization is made up of the people that work for it, particularly the prosecutors in this instance, because they are the front facing, and they're the ones that represent us in terms of the prosecution of these cases. So it's very important for us to emphasize that now, so that if you really want to join the NPA, you need to be very clear of what's going to be expected of you as a prosecutor, but also as an employee of the NPA. Thank you very much, Advocate de Kock. And maybe just before we finish with you, just quickly entice the aspirants, and let's try and get them to be as excited as possible about joining the prosecution service. In that, you know, when they come in as prosecutors, you know, what kind of other opportunities are there? You know, we have a general prosecution side, we have the specialist, we also have units like the asset forfeiture unit and the investigating directorate now. So how, you know, they just need to have a sort of a forecast of what's in store once they join the NPA. Unmute again, please.
Yes, so I think that, I mean, the first important value for all of us is that if we want to make a difference in society, if we want to change the patterns of crime in our society, and if we feel we have a passion to deal with that, then by all means, this is the profession you need to be in. And once you are appointed within the MPA, there are a number of professional paths that one can explore, and we'll hear a bit more about that later. Of course, there is work in terms, other work in terms of the administration, the professional support services of the organization. But those who have qualified with a legal qualification, who are part of this platform today, must probably join to become prosecutors. And then within the ranks of the prosecution, we have divided up the work into various specialized areas. So as we progress in our experience as lawyers and as prosecutors in the MPA, we can decide in which direction we need to go. For example, we've got capabilities that deal with tax law, with tax contraventions, which is very exciting for some lawyers who are geared up for that kind of work. We have commercial prosecutors who deal with commercial work, who deal with corruption, which is a huge problem currently, as we know, in our country. So a lot of exciting things are happening within the corruption area in the prosecution. And of course, linked to that is the creation of the Investigative Directorate that was set up about 2 years ago and really is functioning very effectively at the moment. So as part of the career pathing, one can also eventually join the Investigating Directorate. And in fact, we have indicated as part of enhancing our aspirant program, we would like to place aspirants once they graduate. Some aspirants who qualify may be placed in the Investigating Directorate. And then we also have the asset forfeiture unit that is largely dealing with asset recovery, following the money that has left our country unlawfully through money laundering, illicit money flows. We have prosecutors and lawyers who are in our asset forfeiture units. We have prosecutors who are dedicated to sexual violence, sexual offenses. These are specialist areas, and prosecutors with time are then trained to work with vulnerable groups in our society, to work with children who have been abused, with women who have been abused, and to ensure that justice is done in our courts. So we have sexual offences courts, and there we have dedicated prosecutors who are dealing with that work. And then, of course, we have work in our high courts. We have prosecutors on a daily basis dealing with various offences, from murder to kidnapping to rape. Very, very serious offences are prosecuted in our high courts, and of course in our regional courts as well. Our regional courts are largely dedicated to criminal trials, and a lot of criminal work happens in our various regional courts. And of course in the district courts, the prosecutors who qualify after the aspirant program are then assigned to our district courts, and that's where you start your career. But the career of prosecutor is very exciting. There's many facets to it. And so, of course, there's lots and lots of opportunities to go forward. I know that one of you currently in this group, I see there are about 500 people in this group. One of you are going to be the future NDPP. So you need to work hard, and then we look forward to the day when one of you will graduate to become the NDPP of the MPA. Thank you.
Yeah, that's quite an inspiration. Thank you very much, Advocate de Kock. Now, maybe let's just go to the questions, and let me clarify. Advocate de Kock was just really doing the overview, as you would have seen. And I see most of the questions are really preempting the actual presentation, because all the questions are asking what Advocate Rangaga is going to go through, and Masha. So for now, I'm just finding questions that are specific to, and maybe Stacy, yours is quite relevant for Advocate de Kock to respond to, where you're asking, will one need to leave the NPA to do pupillage at a bar council in order to become an advocate in the NPA? So maybe start with that one, Advocate de Kock, while I look for others that are relevant for you, because most of them are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So currently you will have an LLB degree. If you want to have into the profession, the legal profession, you know the different paths that you have, either as an attorney or as an advocate. You will have to leave the MPA to do pupillage if you want to be admitted as an advocate at the moment. What we are doing is we are reviewing the legislation dealing with the Legal Practice Act and the MPA Act. And we would like to see a future scenario where the MPA also becomes a route into the legal profession and for admission. But this is still work in progress, and we hope to present proposals to Parliament to amend the MPA legislation so that that aspect can also be dealt with. But currently, if you want to become an advocate or you want to become an attorney, then of course there's different requirements that you have to comply with in order to qualify in that regard.
Thank you, Advocate Cork. Just scanning through the questions. I'm skipping, as I said, all the ones that are, because they are preempting the presentations. Second question. Okay, I think all these other ones are really, are there vacancies for prosecutors after training? I think that's also for Daphne to address. Look, I think, you know, true to form, I think really the important point of this webinar is really to help with the application process now. So, you know, the kinds of questions that are coming through are just really a testament to that. So maybe without too much waste of time, maybe let's get Advocate Rangaga to get on to the gist of what this webinar is about today, so that we can start addressing all the questions that are coming through. Advocate de Kock, you will hang around with us a bit, but obviously at some point before the webinar finishes, Advocate de Kock will need to run off to other engagements. But thank you very much, Advocate de Kock, for your time this morning. And over to you, Advocate Rangaga, with your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and all the people who were able to log into our webinar. This webinar is going to take you through on the application process and on the Aspirant Prosecutor program. Advocate de Kock has said a lot, has given you an overview. So what I will be doing, I'll be talking about the Aspirant Prosecutor, actually what the program entails and what is it that you have to expect, what is it that you have to do. As the program director said, we also have our HR person here who will also be talking about the processes of selection, recruitment, etc. Colleagues, you will remember previously, before the NPA came into place, this program was under the Department of Justice. And we took over the program in 2004 as an internship program in the NPA. The Aspirant Prosecutor program is an in-service training program which is aimed at providing young graduates with an opportunity to gain practical prosecutorial experience. I mean, Advocate de Kock has said much about this. This program runs for a period of 12 months. So it doesn't mean that when we talk about the 12 months, it means that January to December. The 12-month period is determined by the NPA, but it strictly has to be 12 months. All aspirant prosecutors during the program are assessed on a continuous basis, and before the end of the 12 months, those who are enrolled into the program, they go through what we call the final assessment to determine their capabilities and their skills as to whether we can appoint them as prosecutors. As we said in the beginning, the Aspirant Prosecutor program is aligned to the government's objective of advancing youth employment. The reason why we even run the advert and this webinar during this month is actually to attract all the youth that are unemployed, the legally qualified youth that are unemployed out there. Apply in numbers so that you can be able to join the NPA. It focuses on, the focus will be given to the youth and other persons with disability. A few initiatives that took place in 2020 when it comes to the Aspirant Prosecutor program. In 2021, the Aspirant Prosecutor program was decentralized, meaning when I say it was decentralized, we have training centers in all provinces within South Africa. And we trained 404 aspirant prosecutors throughout in the magistrates court. And aspirant prosecutors received theoretical and practical training from experienced prosecutors. So if you are an aspirant prosecutor, you will have someone on your side to take you through the theoretical part and the practical part. I mean, the purpose is to bridge the gap between what you have learned at the university and what you need to put into practice inside the courtroom. Experienced prosecutors in the regions assume the responsibility of transferring their skills. So you will be paired with someone who's very experienced, who's got the passion to transfer their skills to the aspirant prosecutors. How to enroll into the program. This is the most important part. For 2023, the advert was placed on the website, the DPSA website, and on the NPA website. As I said in the beginning, respond to the advert by applying. Send through your applications. The advert was placed on the 17th of June 2022 with a closing date of the 4th of July 2022. And please note that no late applications will be considered. If your application comes in on the 5th, we are not going to consider it because normally we receive a lot of applications, and all applications are to be submitted electronically, that is via email to the specified email address. No hand deliveries will be accepted or post because the NPA uses an electronic handling system. Once your application is received, let's say you are an applicant, you have applied, you submitted your application. Once your application is received, immediately you'll receive an auto reply acknowledging your receipt of your application. This is just an acknowledgement. It doesn't say that you qualify or not. It's just an acknowledgement. Should you apply and not receive an acknowledgement, please communicate, send an email to our communications to inquire, but don't do it immediately. Maybe you can wait for a day or two and then send communication. And applicants are directed to use one email address throughout the recruitment process. The reason why we say please use one email address is because when you use different email address or during the recruitment process, you happen to change your email address, you will disadvantage yourself as an applicant. Applicants should also select and apply for appointment at one chosen cluster as per advert. You will see how the advert is structured. It's got a CPP and the reference number. So please choose one cluster. And should you apply to more than one cluster, you'll automatically be disqualified. All applications must be submitted on the most recent Z83 form and should be accompanied by a brief CV. Remember, we are not looking for people with experience, but we are looking for people who are law graduates or final year students. Now, the Z83 application form. The last version of the Z83 form was issued in January 2021. Please make sure that when you submit your applications, you use the Z83, that is the one that was issued in January 2021, because it's different from the previous Z83 that is there. And this Z83 form can be downloaded from NPA website or a website of any government department. The handwritten Z83 must be completed in block letters. Block letters meaning in capital letters, so that the person who receives it is able to read what you have written. You can also type in the Z83. We are not saying you don't have to type the Z83. We do accept typed in Z83. Make sure that you complete all columns of the Z83, because failure to complete all columns of Z83, it automatically disqualifies you. And the CV without the Z83 will amount to a disqualification. If all your information is on a Z83, that might be sufficient, but don't think that if you send a Z83, a CV without a Z83, you will be qualified. So the Z83 is a prerequisite. Again, there is no need to attach qualifications, but it doesn't mean that if you have already applied and attached your qualifications, we are going to disqualify you. Qualifications will be required at a later stage. Now, who is eligible to apply? Any person that has successfully completed a 4-year legal qualification, that is your LLB degree. And when we say 4-year, I put it in bracket there, LLB. BProc is not sufficient. And your qualification must have been obtained from a South African university. Also, final year LLB students are permitted to apply. However, a complete degree must be obtained before the commencement of the program. Let's say the program will commence on the 1st of February 2023. You must have completed your LLB degree. South African citizens with foreign qualifications must verify their qualification with SAQA. Applicants must also be the first-time participants in the program. If ever you have already participated in the program previously, unfortunately, this is for the first-timers. We are not going to consider you because we do have the database for that. Applicants who are employed in any government department must obtain an approval from their employer before joining the program. You do not have to get an approval prior. Let's say when you submit your application, but a moment we say, or we call you for an interview, you can just highlight your employer and see as to what is it in place for you. Because some government department, they will allow you to join the NPA as an aspirant while still being paid by them. But other government departments, they will encourage you to resign and you'll have to start with the NPA on a contract. This also includes applicants that are employed in the NPA. That is why I say where such an approval is denied, the applicant upon successful enrollment must resign from their current employment and join the NPA on a 12-month contract as an aspirant, not as a prosecutor, but as an aspirant, whereby you'll be going through the training. For final year students, you must have completed the following courses. Law of evidence, it is very important, especially if you want to become a prosecutor. There's no way that you can become a prosecutor if you haven't completed the law of evidence. Criminal law, criminal procedure, civil law, civil procedure, interpretation of statutes. Remember also as a prosecutor, we deal with statutory offenses. Like your drunken driving is a statutory offense. You might not know, but it's a statutory offense. It's in terms of the Road Traffic Act. Constitutional law as well, so that you are not infringed on people's constitutional rights. Now I'm going to go through the selection process. All applicants will be screened to ensure that their application meets the minimum requirements for the enrollment in the program. Applicants who have satisfied the minimum criteria will be invited to write an entry examination as part of the selection process. How we invite you, you are going to receive an individualized letter that is written to you, signed by me, that says you have gone through the first process of the recruitment process. Now the next stage is going to be the entry examination. Applicants will be notified of the date of the entry examination, the time, and the place of the entry examination. That all the communication will be via email. That is why it is important that you keep one email address through the recruitment process. The entry examination that is going to be written by the candidates who have gone through the first phase is based on the study guide for aspirant prosecutors. And that study guide is going to be made available on the NPA website. Only the NPA website, not any other government department's website, but the NPA website. So you can access it and then go through it and prepare yourself for the entry examination. The entry examination, it's mainly what you have studied at the university and what is expected of you. And we'll be covering all the courses that I've said, your law of evidence, criminal law, criminal procedure, interpretation of statute, etc. Applicants will be expected to take entry examination at the center which was selected in their initial application. Why we say you will have to take up the entry examination at the center which you selected in your application. It is very important for the statistics purpose for that cluster to know as to how many people they should expect and to have their ducks in the row. And also to make sure that they have enough room to accommodate people that are coming to write. Because in the past, we have experienced people changing the centers where they want to write the entry examination. This causes an administrative nightmare. So we encourage people to stick with the centers where they have applied to write the entry examinations, to the centers or to the clusters where they have applied. Physical addresses of the centers, as I said, will be communicated also on the website of the NPA. And I said also previously, the entry examination will be written on the same date and at the same time in all centers. That is why it's important that you apply to only one training center or one CPP as per advert. The entry examination is a 3-hour paper consisting of multiple choice. So it's up to you. You can take an hour, go through the question paper, write it, tick. They will take you through the process. It will depend on how you have prepared for the entry examination. It is not as complex as you would think. And after the entry examination, your papers are marked electronically. So no human element is going to interfere with the marking of your answer sheet. They are marked electronically. So applicants who obtain 50% and above may. The reason why we say may be invited for an oral interview is because it depends on how many applicants or applications have been received in a particular cluster or division. Furthermore, the minimum mark for consideration to be invited for an oral interview will be determined annually by the NPA, considering the number of applications that we have received and how many people have obtained a pass mark of 50% and above. Now, applicants who are invited for an oral interview, that is when you have to come along with copies of your ID, matric certificate, and degree certificate or certificates. If you have 3-4 degree certificates, meaning your LLB certificates, you want your legal certificates. That is when you are called in for an interview or when you receive a letter to say, come in for an for an oral interview, please make sure that you bring along copies of the matric certificate, ID, and degree certificate. Final year student, we are aware that you wouldn't be having your LLB certificate, but please make sure that you bring along your transcript or the academic record, and it must be an official one on a university letterhead, not the one that you have extracted from your records or whatever. It must be on an official university letterhead. Applicants with foreign qualifications. If you have received a foreign legal qualification, we are not going to exclude you, especially if you are a South African citizen, but you have to make sure that your qualification is equivalent to the South African LLB degree. And for it to be equivalent to the South African LLB degree, it must be accredited by SAQA. And the responsibility of accreditation is with you. You as an applicant must make sure that you take your qualification to SAQA, and you'll also pay the costs. Once the whole process has been done, you'll be subjected to vetting and security check. With a vetting and security check, remember, as a prosecutor, we also check as to whether you have any criminal records and whether you have disclosed. You will see those who have already have access to your Z83, they ask you whether have you previously been charged. Please make sure that you disclose, because should this come only at the time when we do the vetting and security, that will be treated as you being dishonest. And it says, have you been charged? It does not say, have you been convicted? You may be charged, but then the case was withdrawn. Be honest and state, yes, I was charged and I don't know what happened to the case, if you know. And also we check your credit records, verification of your academic qualification. That is what it's a vetting process is all about. Now, once all the process has been done, you went through the oral interview, you are one of the successful candidates, then we enroll you into the 12 months program as an aspirant prosecutor. And aspirant prosecutors who are enrolled into the program receive delegation to prosecute from the local DPP, meaning the Director of Public Prosecution for that province. And also they take an oath of office. You've heard Advocate Dikok when he was talking about our values. One of our values is that we have to be accountable, we have to be we have to be professional, we have to be independent, we have to be credible. So when you take an oath of office, you will be swearing that you are going to be accountable, ethical, everything, because we do not want prosecutors that are tainted. Aspirant prosecutors are trained on how to conduct criminal prosecutions and other related functions incidental to prosecution, which includes, amongst others, office management, administration, and court role management. You are not going to be admin officers when I say office management, but remember, in each and every office as a person, whether you are a prosecutor or an admin, you have to know how to manage your office. There are few registers that will be there. At the beginning of the program, the aspirant prosecutors receive 4 to 6 weeks theoretical classroom training. This theoretical classroom training, you receive it from experienced prosecutors within the NPA. They tell you on specific subjects that we encounter as a prosecutor, and they teach you on how to go about. And sometimes we also do mock trials. Thereafter, you receive a practical or in-court training. In-court training, you'll be dealing with criminal cases inside the courtroom, real criminal cases inside the courtroom, but in the lower court, not in the high court or in the regional court, in the magistrate court. How the program is being managed. The program is managed by the chief prosecutor of that specific cluster with the assistance of the trainers who are within that cluster. I think at the beginning of the program, you will meet the management of each and every cluster, and they will take you through the organogram of each and every division or each and every cluster. So you will understand where do you fit in as an aspirant prosecutor. And then the CPP which is the chief prosecutor, reports the status and the development of the aspirant prosecutor program to the director of public prosecution within that division, whereby then it comes to head office where it's been reported to the deputy national director and the coordinator, which is myself, on how the program is being run and how you as an aspirant prosecutor, you are developing into becoming a competent and skillful prosecutor. And how we are monitoring this. This is being monitored by the designated tutors. They complete monthly performance report where they will then write on your performance, how you are performing during the program. And how you are performing, it's not only how you are performing when you are inside the courtroom, it's also how you are performing amongst your colleague, with the witnesses, with the accused, how you portray yourself. And during the program, aspirant prosecutors are subjected to continuous assessment to determine and enhance their skills and competencies to perform their tasks as prosecutors. As I said in the beginning, before the expiry of the program, you undergo what we call a final assessment. The final assessment is not like the entry examination. No written test is going to be, you are not going to be subjected to any written test, but then it's on the job, meaning it's practical. You'll be assessed on how you conduct yourself as a prosecutor from morning when you enter that building up until the end when your court roll is done. Aspirant prosecutors who are found to be competent may be appointed into entry-level prosecutorial posts in the NPA. Why we say may be appointed, this will depend on the number of vacancies that we have, but I must say that as NPA, we train to retain. The NPA as an employer of choice, train to retain. Thus, where there are no vacant entry-level prosecutorial posts, if you were declared competent at the end of the program, you are going to be absorbed on contract as a prosecutor until such time a vacant post arises. And as to where the vacant post arises, we do not know. It will depend, and then you will be offered that position. Aspirant prosecutors may be placed where there is a need and where the organization feels that your skills and competencies will actually are required by the organization, but not at your preferred workstation. Yes, we do consider certain things, but at the same time, we don't encourage people to tell us as to where do they want to be placed. We look at what the organization needs. And if an aspirant prosecutor is appointed additional to the establishment as an entry-level prosecutor on contract and receives an offer for permanent placement, and that person declines that offer, it will be considered that the employee, meaning that ex-aspirant who went through the program for 12 months, has terminated his or her contract with the NPA. Now, the existing contract will be terminated and no further relationship will exist between you and the NPA. People, I want to say to you that when you are trained in cluster A, it doesn't mean that you will be permanently appointed in cluster A. You may be appointed in cluster B. Remember, we are going to look at the need of the organization and also at your skills and competencies. There are some people that are not able to function in a one-man station. They still need to be under the supervision of the senior prosecutors, but there are some people that can actually work well in a one-man station, two-man station, etc. Now, the criteria for permanent appointment as a prosecutor in the NPA, after you have completed the training, we look at the available permanent posts. Also, we look at your level of performance during the program. As I said, this will depend also on your personal traits. That is, whether you are able to function in a one-man station or you are able to function in a two-man station. Also, equity is going to be taken into account. That is the equity of that office or of that cluster or of that division. Now, Successful aspirant prosecutors who have completed the 12 months program, it does not end there. Some of you will have the affinity to specialize in civil related prosecutions or asset forfeiture or commercial crime or corruption prosecutions. You will then be given an opportunity to express your interest, and then you will be assigned or deployed to those specialized units within the NPA. That is your civil litigation unit, your asset forfeiture, your specialized commercial crime unit, your tax unit, and the ID. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Advocate Rangaga. That was really comprehensive. In fact, I see most of the questions that we have been getting on the chat have been addressed. But I will now go through, and I think maybe this is where you come in mostly, Marcia, because most of these questions really relate to the application process, the actual explanation of, what is required. But first of all, in case people missed it, because there's a lot of questions around the age restriction, can you please deal with that and clarify, what the age restriction is? Is there an age restriction to the application? Masha?
Thank you, Bulelwa, and thanks to Daphne. For the age restriction, I would refer them to the notes where the advert, with the advert. We are saying in the advert, and I'll expand on that, although the aspirant program is in line with the NPA's government policy to advance youth employment, the NPA reserves the right to admit persons with previously disadvantaged backgrounds to the program. So we do not have a set age cut, whereby we say this is the age limit in terms of the intake, because especially the last sentence there, we speak of the previously disadvantaged people. You would find that there are people who have been in a different stream in terms of their career, and they want to divert to prosecution. So we wouldn't want to, and they've obtained their LLB degrees and they want to pursue a career in prosecution. So those are considered, even though the program is indeed to advance youth development and employment. So we do not have a specific age cut. Thanks, Bulelwa.
Thank you. I think at this point we can actually close this webinar because it looks like, every second question is about this. The other question that is important to understand is if you're currently doing an internship program within government, are you excluded from applying in the NPA since it is government as well? Are you clear about that question? There are quite a number of them that I want to understand how, if you're working for government, can you actually also apply for the Aspirant Prosecutor program as well?
Yes, you can apply. In Advocate Rangaga's presentation, I don't remember what slide number that is. However, it's a part where it speaks of those that are currently employed in other government departments or wherever they would be employed. She spoke of you would need to get permission, or you would need to get approval from your employer to enroll onto this program. And other employers would allow you to enroll onto this program while you are still with them. However, others would encourage you to completely resign from their employ so that you can take over the aspirant program in its entirety for the 12 months, because you would have to enter into a contract with the NPA for the aspirant 12-month period. So yes, you are encouraged to apply, and the application would be considered in terms of what has also been outlined on the requirements and all of that. So we will not say you should not. And if the question in terms of the internship, I believe perhaps they were referring to the normal internships that we have in the public service. those that we have for 12 months as well. But with the aspirant, it would be a different one in terms of NPA specific training to become a prosecutor. So you wouldn't necessarily be counting that internship as an opportunity. And again, in Advocate Rangaka's presentation, she made mention that if you were previously considered for the aspirant prosecutor program before, you cannot apply for it again, so that you get a second bite to it. So it is specific to the aspirant program. So if you are in the normal internship program, you would be considered for the aspirant program should you meet the requirements. So that is the difference between the normal internship programs that are run by different various government departments, as opposed to this specific aspirant prosecutor program with us in the NPA. Thanks.
Thank you. And then there's a question about the reference numbers. There seems to be a confusion about where to find the reference numbers to quote on the advertisement. Can you please clarify that? Okay.
The application or the advert as it went out, it would be Annexure J, where the National Prosecuting Authority positions were advertised in the bigger circular. And you would see it takes up about 3 pages. I'm not sure what page it would be in the bigger circular, but the last bit of it, where the heading on the left-hand side, it's applications. And you would see on that applications, that's where, in actual fact, that is the email addresses, sorry. The reference numbers would be the center, because that's where you get your CPP, which is the cluster that Advocate Rangaka spoke to in the presentation. You would see it's the aspirant, the post, and then you would have the salary, and then below the salary, it would say the center. And with the center, you get the various centers where we are advertising these aspirant prosecutors. And next to each center, the first one there is CPP Port Elizabeth. And its reference is APT, which is Aspirant Prosecutor Training, 2022-01. That would be the reference number. So that's where you would get the reference numbers. And for all the centers, they are indicated there under the heading on the left-hand side that speaks to the center. So you would have to put that as a reference. And you would apply for the specific center where you would like to be trained at. And in the presentation, again, in Advocate Rangaka's presentation, again, just to reiterate, you would have to choose one center and stick to that one center, because as per the presentation, you would be disqualified if you're going to apply to several centers. So choose the center that you would want to be considered for and apply for that center. And those reference numbers are there as per the center on the advert. Thanks, Bulelo.
Thank you very much, Ms. Malope. The other question that has come through is about virtual interviews. Although this is for at a later stage when we're at interview stage, but somebody wants to know if they happen to be out of the country at the time, would they be allowed to participate in a virtual interview? And I suppose, whatever other circumstances that would actually lead for somebody not to be able to attend an interview, would they be allowed to attend virtually?
With interviews,
for Daphne more, I don't know. Yeah, okay.
Would definitely like to take it, but I can start and perhaps you can add on to what I would say.
Okay.
With interviews, we have really moved with the times, and we do have virtual interviews in situations where people cannot physically get to the venue where they are to be interviewed. So we do use a hybrid model in terms of conducting interviews. Some would prefer to have a sit-in interview around a boardroom table, and others would probably, depending on the circumstances, would prefer to have it virtually. We do have, or we do make allowance for virtual interviews as well. Advocate Rangaka, would you like to add on that one?
Is Advocate Rangaka with us? Okay, maybe just the next one that I see that anonymous attendee is asking if he did a BA law and now is a final year LLB student, but the institution hasn't issued the degree for BA law. Okay, Advocate Rangaga, we have a problem with it.
Because it's important that we know that where you are not somewhere else, and we are able to communicate with you, we are able to see you.
Maybe just repeat, Advocate Rangaga, because you came through in halfway. I think there was a problem with your connection at first. Sorry, please repeat your response there.
I was just adding that with the virtual interviews, it's important that the moment you know that you won't be able to attend the physical interview, let us know where you are, and then give us the contact details of where you will be sitting for an interview. And then we make contact with those particular people to make sure that the environment is safe enough for us to trust that there is no any other third person or no any other interferences during the interviews. Did you get that?
It's not there. Sorry, I was struggling with my unmuting button. There's another question about earnings. That's a very important question, Advocate Rangaka. How much would the aspirants be earning while they're in the program?
I don't think it's for me, it's for Ms. Malope.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Bulelwa. The earnings, they are also on the advert, and it's the second line after the title of Aspirant Prosecutor training. It's a range between 200 and odd to 230 odd thousand per annum. And in terms of our classifications, we would call it LP1 to LP2. And this, of course, as per the range, it would depend on the individual in terms of probably where they are and the qualifications and so forth. So there are lots of consideration in terms of the package that they would be earning. Hence, you see a range there. So when they go to the advert, they will also see the salary there. It's stipulated. It's per annum, and it's on those LP levels as we define our levels, our salary levels and scales.
Okay, that's really a very good starting salary, I think. Thank you very much, Marcia. Then there's a question, it's a comment, a question. Kwenzo Makatini is saying his concern is based on the support documents. On the application, do they include supporting documents or only the Z83 and CV? And if supporting documents are not required, how do we include required modules or subjects without producing an academic transcript? Is that clear?
Yes, it is clear. I can respond.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Yeah, at the application stage, we say also in terms of what we have put out in the advert, that it is a must to submit a Z83, a fully completed Z83, and the Z83 must be the one that came into effect from the 1st of January 2021. It's the latest version of the Z83, and it must be accompanied by a CV, a comprehensive CV. So those are the two initial documents that we would require from the applicants. And in terms of attachments, we will request attachments later on in the process whereby we have done the selection and we want to move on to the next phase in terms of the interviews. So, but at this stage, the applicants must submit a Z83 fully completed and a comprehensive CV. That would be enough at the application stage. Thanks.
Can
Thank
I add
you.
something? Sorry,
Okay.
Bulelwa.
Yeah, please.
May I just add that also with the Z83, I said handwritten must be in block letters, and you can type in your Z83 and you will see the Z83 that Ms. Malupe is talking about, the one that was issued in January 2021. There's a column at the bottom where you have to initial. You can type in your initials, and also where, if you are typing everything, we do consider also the column where you have typed in and dated. It is very important that those two things are in there.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I was actually looking at that question again. Okay, this recording will be made available so that people can go through it, because I can see that there's a lot of confusion specifically around the completion of the Z83. So and maybe we will consider just coming up with another easier flow chart or something that actually explains better the issue around the CV and the Z83s. So questions like, do we need motivation letters or covering letters to submit with our CVs and Z83? I see you shaking your head, Advocate Rangaka. So that means it's not necessary. As long as you just submit the Z83 with your CV with all the detail that is required. We don't want your motivation letters. We'll leave that for much later in the process. There's a question about, somebody just posted about whether they can apply while pregnant. Yeah, Advocate, that's a, I don't know if you have a response to that. Is there anything that stops people from applying when they are pregnant?
No, we do not discriminate. Remember, otherwise it will amount to discrimination, but I will allow Ms. Malupe to actually explain more. We do not discriminate. If you are pregnant, you can apply. Remember, you don't know, the doctors can say you are going to give birth on the 1st of February when the program starts, but it's only through God's nature that you might give birth later on or earlier on. So we do not discriminate. But Ms. Malupe can actually elaborate further on that.
Indeed, we do not discriminate. We are not allowed to discriminate against women who are at their children-bearing ages, and you are and you can apply, and the circumstances around your pregnancy would be worked around should you be one of the successful applicants and eventually become an aspirant, to in actual fact ensure that you complete the 12-month program. So we do not discriminate, and depending on when at the beginning, during, or towards the end of the program you become pregnant, and we make an allowance to bring you in after your maternity leave to come back and complete the program. So pregnant women can apply. We do not discriminate. We're not allowed to discriminate. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. I don't know if you're able to respond to the questions at this point, Advocate Rangaka, about when the exam date will be. I think that's quite far advanced in the process. But if you do have that response, maybe you can give it quickly, or should I move on?
It will depend on various factors, but I can say the exam date will be around about September. And the study guide or the guide for the entry examination will be given to communications to load it on the NPA website as soon as the advert closes. So if you think that you've done everything correct, you can start studying, even if you haven't received the letter to say you've gone through the first phase, just to make sure that you are ready. So the entry examination will be around about September month. But the exact date, I'm not sure about it.
That's actually a good idea about really starting to prepare ahead of time. Don't wait to hear that you've actually been given the opportunity. So there's some advice. Most of the questions are just really, and maybe my colleagues, Tabisile, you can also help me, because I'm scanning through the questions and most of them are, have similar threads, and I think most of them have been answered. Unless there's something then that we are missing, Tabisile, that you can bring to my attention. Ms. Malope, can you please further elaborate on what does it entail to have a comprehensive CV? Is there any required format of a CV?
Okay, thanks, Bulelwa. You see the Z83, especially on, there are parts on the Z83, part E and part F and part G specifically. Some people would prefer to refer us to the CV, and these parts are speaking to formal qualification, work experience if you have, and references. And when I refer to a comprehensive CV, I'm tying that up with what you are going to provide us on the Z83. Some people, when they refer us to the CV in terms of what they would have given us on the Z83, we need to get to the CV and find all of that full information in terms of your qualifications, your work experience, and your references. So that's what I'm referring to when I say a comprehensive CV. Some people would just, tell us they've obtained the qualification or they have been working at a certain place from January to June. We do not necessarily mean what we don't necessarily understand what you mean. It is preferable to put the dates. I started working at a particular place from the 1st of June up until the 31st of December. So that's what we mean by a comprehensive, because there we are able to calculate exact the number of years of experience or whatever it is that we are looking for under that specific part. So comprehensively, if you are not going to complete your Z83 in full, especially on the part E, F, and G, please ensure that your CV does give full information on all those aspects. So that's what I was referring to. It's preferable though, if you can put the information on both, because the Z83 makes it easier because it's in a tabular form and it's easier to get to the number of years of experience and to get to the formal qualifications as quickly as possible. So it's preferable if you could put it on both. But if you referred us, make sure that the CV covers it comprehensively. That's what I was referring to. Thanks, Wille.
May I just raise one question? It's Tabisile. There's two questions that I'm picking up on the chat line. One is about, those questions refer to the bad credit record due to retrenchment. This person is asking if does it disqualify you if you have a bad credit record because you were retrenched. And I think the second one also refers to the bad credit record. So does it automatically disqualify you to this aspirant program? Thank you.
No, it's not an automatic disqualification. It's considerations that are made during the selection process. However, it's not an automatic disqualification. So do apply, and consideration in terms of all other aspects are taken while conducting the recruitment and the selection process. Advocate Rangaka, perhaps you would like to add something. I see you are unmuted. I'm thinking you wanted to add something, but it's not an automatic disqualification.
No, I was going to say the same thing. Thank you very much. It's not an automatic disqualification. The other thing that I've also seen coming through is that if the case was withdrawn, is it necessary that one states it on the Z83? Remember, the Z83, as Ms. Malupe has stated, it doesn't say, have you ever been convicted? It says, have you ever been charged? So a moment the case is withdrawn, it means there was a charge against you. So please indicate, and that does not mean that it will disadvantage you. At least you were honest, you stated, and then even when we do the screening, it will come up. So state it so that we know. But then it does not go into disadvantage you during the recruitment process.
Thank you, Advocate Rangaka. Two related questions. So on the, as they submit the application, do they write on the subject line, or what do they write on the subject line they're asking? And then secondly, what happens if they don't receive an acknowledgement of receipt? You know, that automatic response that confirms that your application has been submitted.
It was indicated on the presentation that give it a day or two. If still nothing comes up, please send us an email so that we can check it out to see what has happened, because, you know, technology is technology. Things happen, and emails get lost, and some are blocked, and whatever the reason may be. But give it a day or two, but still, if you don't receive acknowledgement, then do contact us so that we can try and see where is it hanging, perhaps to try and retrieve it, because you do get those types of instances whereby it's hanging somewhere. I'm using the word hanging because it's loosely, I don't have the IT terminology for it, but do tell us so that we can look into it and try to retrieve whatever it is that you've sent. If we haven't received it, we'll ask you to send it again, but give it a day or two so that we get surety that there is a problem in terms of what happened or what transpired when you sent the application.
Thank you. And the contact details for that, for following up, which email should they use?
Advocate Rangaka, during her presentation, indicated that they could make use of the communications email address, and it would be forwarded to the relevant reference numbers, because sending the email to the same email address that you sent it to, you probably will not respond. I mean, you receive a response there because it's a no reply email. So send it to an alternative email, or give a call to the persons. You will see the last part of the advert. There are inquiries. The inquiries people there would be able to try and assist in terms of what would have happened to the application. So send an email by the communications email address, or give a call to the person indicated on the application as an inquiries person for that particular cluster for you to inquire there. So that we can try and see and check with IT what could the problem have been when you were sending the application. Or is there another one, Advocate Rangaka, I'm not sure, other avenue where they could send the inquiries except for the inquiries person and the communications email address? Would there be another slot where they could try and find out what happens to the application?
No, the communications is the one that works effectively, because in the past, that's what we used. And then communication is the one that filters all the inquiries and then send it to the relevant clusters for them to attend to it.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thanks.
Advocate Rangaka, more work for the communication email. But to clarify, that email address is communication@npa.gov.za. No S, please. Communication, no S, and then that will be referred accordingly. But I still think that it's best and quicker if people actually just contact that office, that cluster that they applied to in terms of the contact number or contact details that have been provided. But obviously the communication email will also be open to receive these emails. I'm being asked to repeat the email address. The email address is communication, no S at the end, communication@npa.gov.za. And then there's another question about, people who've already submitted their application, saying they submitted with supporting documents. Will that disqualify them? Was there any indication that we would disqualify people if they submit? Can you just clarify that? Supporting documents, do you need them? Do you not need them? Is it a disqualifying point?
No, it's not a disqualifying point. If you've already submitted with your attachments, it's not a disqualifying point. We will receive it as such, and it will be processed as such. So it's not a disqualifying factor. No.
Okay, thank you. Tabsile, can you help again with others that haven't been covered?
There was one about people who have previously applied and went through the interview phase but didn't make it. Can they still apply for this for the 2022 intake?
Yes, people who have applied went through the recruitment process and they did not make it at the end. They were not enrolled into the program. You are still eligible to apply. And also people who applied, wrote the entry examination, but were unsuccessful, you can still apply. You never participated in the program. Only people that we are not going to consider, because they will be on our database, are people who participated in the program, who were enrolled into the program for 12 months period. And at the end, we offered them maybe employment in any other place and they decline and they want to reapply. Unfortunately, they are not going to be considered. They can apply for any other post within the NPA, but not as an aspirant prosecutor, because you were an aspirant prosecutor and you were declared competent.
Thank you very much. Another point that seems to be popular in the questions is about the academic record. Can you clarify around the academic record, how they submit it, in what format and what detail goes into it?
With regard to the academic record, remember your academic record, to me, it's equivalent to the qualification. This is for the only for the final year students who do not have the certificate when they are called for an interview. So you go to your university, you get your what you call the transcript on the university letterhead. That is the academic record. We're not saying when you apply, but when you are called in for an interview and you do not have your LLB certificate. There are some who come in with a letter from the university. They've completed their LLB, but they have not yet graduated and they do not have a hard copy certificate. That letter that says you have satisfied the requirement is also sufficient, because you will then be, you would have obtained your LLB degree.
Thank you, Advocate Rangaga. I saw a question coming through about whether you can apply if you have disabilities. Of course you can apply. I think that one I can even answer myself without being without being in the HR. The NPA does not there is no way. A disability, in fact, is actually an advantage in instances, because then we need to have to be accessible. And so when you actually have people with disabilities, it's very important to consider them. We would even maybe prioritize them. I hope I'm saying the right thing, HR people, but I know that. Ms. Malope, do you want to put it properly in HR language?
You have put it properly, but we do not discriminate against people living with a disability or disabled people. We do not discriminate, and it is a good thing if we're going to have people with a disability, because in terms of the Employment Equity Act, we would be complying, and we would be on par in terms of what needs to happen to give opportunities to people who have been previously disadvantaged. So we do not discriminate against people with disabilities. They are encouraged to apply, and we would look forward to have them.
And
Thanks,
just to add on that, please, when you apply, state your disability, because then so that we can be able to accommodate you accordingly. Let's say you are partially blind or completely blind, we know what to put in place for you.
Thank you, Advocate Rangak. They include that in the application already in the initial submission.
Correct.
To go back to that, Bulelwa, on the Z83, actually, there is a row that asks you if you are disabled or have a disability. And you would have to indicate it there and tell us if you have a disability. And perhaps in the CV, you could identify, as Advocate Rangaka has said, on what the actual disability is, so that should you be successful and be part of the program, we know how to cater for the needs in terms of your disability. So the Z83 does have a section or a question that speaks to the disability factor, and you would have to answer yes there. But further on, please do tell us what it is, so that we know exactly what we are dealing with. Thanks.
Thank you, Marcia. There's a question about articles. If somebody has served articles before, does that count as previous experience that must indicate on the application? And secondly, on the Z83, where it indicates departments, to which you're applying, what should they put in? NPA, obviously, right? National Prosecuting Authority is the department. Even though the National Prosecuting Authority is part of the Department of Justice, but for the purposes of the Z83, please confirm, Marcia, that it's acceptable that they put in National Prosecuting Authority or NPA.
Correct. Where it says department, put National Prosecuting Authority, because this is a public service-wide application for employment form. They wouldn't necessarily put a program there. So where it requires you to put the department, where the position has been advertised, please put National Prosecuting Authority. Correct.
Thank you very much. I think we have actually, because as I read the questions coming through, they really repeat questions that have been already addressed. So I think, other people will find the information, because we will make the recording, this whole webinar available at a later point before the application closes. So it will be important for people who maybe have come in at a later point that whatever question they have that hasn't been addressed, they feel they haven't had the answer to, can find. And then only then, and maybe, you know, there's still an opportunity to still write to the email address that we have provided, the communication email address, for anything that you feel that you've missed out on and that is not covered. Tabisile, am I correct? It's because the questions are all coming in and are similar, although asked differently. Let's find things that have not been addressed yet. Are you able to pick up those ones?
Yeah, there's just one or two questions. One is about having a protection order against the applicant. Does that automatically disqualify the applicant? And then the second one is about having a driver's license. Is that a requirement for the applicants? Thank you.
Can I please allow Advocate Rangaka to respond to the first one, and then I'll respond to the last part of that question. Is it fine, Advocate?
Okay, I thought you will respond to that. But issue about the protection order, sorry, if you have a protection order, it does not automatically disqualifies you because you are not being charged. Remember, for you to be charged, you must have contravened that protection order. So you haven't been charged. So you may apply if you want to apply. And also the requirements, you must look at the advert. It doesn't say you must be in possession of a driver's license. Yes, probably later in the stage when you are a prosecutor, there will be some positions as a prosecutor whereby a driver's license is required. But at this stage, for one to become an aspirant prosecutor, you do not have to have a driver's license. But once you are in the program, enrolled into the program, go and get yourself a driver's license so that you can move up. It's an added advantage, if I can put it that way. But for now, as an aspirant prosecutor, it is not a requirement.
Okay, thank you. There's a question about if one, and I think maybe, you know, it was addressed, but let's respond to it again. If you applied before and you actually went to the part up to writing the exams, but you failed, are you allowed to apply again?
Yes, you are allowed to apply again. As I said, the people that actually we're saying they are not allowed to apply is the one that were eventually enrolled into the program, went through the 12 months, and they were declared competent. But if you failed the exam or you failed, or you did not make it during the interview, you can apply again. The other question that also I saw it coming up, I'm sorry, it's about the articles and the aspirant prosecutor program. I just want to say that if you have served your articles, that does not preclude you from applying. You can apply to become a prosecutor. It will depend on what career path do you want to follow in the NPA as a prosecutor. Remember, as I said, we do have specialized units. We may use your skill again in LAD where you are going to draft or do civil litigation after you have completed the program. Whether you have done your pupillage and you've passed it, that does not stop you from applying to become an aspirant prosecutor.
Here is a question, Marcia. If you already applied and you left blank spaces in the Z83, and now you realize the error of your ways, can you resubmit?
We were saying, okay, first of all, it would depend where the blank areas were left. And it would depend on what information those blank areas were requesting. It is advisable to fill out the Z83 as complete as possible. The other caution perhaps that I would like to put to the fore is in relation to applying again, but applying again in a different center for a different location as per the centers identified. If you would want to ensure that your application is complete, make sure that it is from the same email address as stated in the presentation, and make sure that now you would have fully completed it, and make sure that it's to the same reference number or same location or same center that you've applied for. Because remember, it is a disqualifying factor if you are going to apply for Port Elizabeth and Pretoria. So if you want to rectify the Z83 in terms of resubmitting your application, you can resubmit. However, please make sure that you are not applying at a different center, because that would automatically disqualify you. And make sure that you are using the same email address that you used before or before this webinar to send us that, so that we are able to see or identify that it's the same person. And this is because the closing date hasn't come through yet. So by virtue of that, you still have the opportunity to provide the information as we require it. But please ensure that, as I've said, the three things I've mentioned are taken into consideration. Otherwise, you would be disqualified. Thanks, Bula.
Thank you very much. There's this question that keeps popping up on my screen about having, if you were involved in a civil matter, does that disqualify you? I'm not sure, but maybe Advocate Rangaga will understand better what this question is about. And then somebody saying volunteer work that they've done or participating in moot courts, would that count as work experience? So do people actually include that in the CV as some kind of experience in the field?
People include any form of experience, usually what formal or some even informal volunteer work that they have been doing for whatever period before completion of their qualifications and so forth. We do not limit you in terms of telling us exactly what experience or prior experience you have. Prior experience is required to determine in terms of where you've been and see what you have been exposed to. So we do not prescribe on the type of experience that we say you need to put onto your CV. So whatever you deem relevant in terms of what work experience you have attained before, do put it onto your CV. And let's see what you have been experienced with and what type of opportunities you have been afforded before. So we do not stipulate or prescribe what you should put in terms of the experience that you've gained.
It's very clear. Thank you very much. And then I don't know if you have an answer, Advocate Rangaga. There's a question about how many aspirants you aim to enroll for 2023. Do you have a number?
Sorry. The number of aspirant prosecutors that we aim to recruit for the 2023 intake, they are actually more than 300. It will depend on how many people apply and how many people have passed. The budget actually allows us to recruit up to 400 aspirant prosecutors. So, and also where they will be trained, whether they will have enough capacity and enough room to train them. So, I mean, it's a big number.
Thank you. Just clarify once more, I think you did touch on it, but let's be sure that people understand. If you have applied to the, one cluster, are you required to go and write exams at that cluster, or do you have an option to go write somewhere else at another cluster, at another center, rather? Thank you.
As I said in my presentation, it is encouraged that if you applied for a particular cluster, please go make an effort to go and write in that area, in that cluster, for logistical reasons, because now we are going to book an exam venue that caters for 500 people, knowing that I've got 500, only 20 people turn up. That is not right. So please make sure that you apply to an area where you know you'll be able to go and write for the entry examination.
Okay, what is the weight of the exam and the weight of the interview in terms of your sifting process? Are you able to give guidance on, how much of it is on the actual exam and how much of it is on the interview for you to make it to the final people?
This is not like at the academic, like in the academic institution where you say for you to be able to write your final exam, you must have obtained during the semester a certain percentage. The entry examination is merely used as a sifting process because we receive so many applications. And as I said, the pass mark is 50%. That pass mark of 50% also, it's going to be determined in each and every cluster. Let's say in cluster A, there are more than 500 people who have obtained 50%. We cannot interview all 500 people, but then we'll have a cutoff percentage. So, but then you must have obtained 50% in order for you to be able to attend an oral interview. So the entry examination is just a sifting process because we are not looking at any experience. We just want people who have got a law degree or who are in their final year of studies.
Okay, thank you very much. I think at this point, unless I'm wrong, Tabisile, but also have a look. But largely, all the key questions that were important to be answered have been answered. But of course, there will always be, or some clarity that is required further. And I think we have provided that email address or other avenues through which people can follow up if they have any further questions of clarity. I think at this point, it would be a good time for us to close the webinar and make sure that people are, I think we have provided a very good opportunity for people to just really be clearer in terms of what is needed for them to submit their application. So please do that. But do know that email address and the contact details are available. But remember also that we have consistent communication throughout up to the last day where we actually tell you that the results are out and people who are successful and not successful. So please do be assured that we will still be continuing to communicate at every stage of the process and updating people. So if you keep your eyes on the social media platforms that we've been using largely, that's where mainly we'll communicate, on our Facebook page, on our Twitter page, and on the website, very importantly. So we will have these regular updates about progress on this program. So I think if there's, and this is the last time, Tabisile, I'm just checking if there's like a new question, is something that's completely different that has been asked that we haven't been addressed. Otherwise, if we can just really propose to close the webinar at this point. Tabisile, is there something glaringly unaddressed at this point?
No, I don't think there is any, but I think also it would help if we post the recording onto the website, as well as the presentation that was made by Advocate Rangaka on the website, so that those who still have questions would get all the information that they require. Thank you.
Yes, no, that's very important. We will keep the communication lines open, and we will make sure that we make all the information accessible. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending our webinar this afternoon. For this morning, it's afternoon now though. At this point, if there's nothing further from any of the panelists, I will propose that we close the webinar. Panelists?
From my side, I just want to say thank you very much for participating in this webinar. We're looking forward to have you as a prosecutors in the NPA. As Advocate Digok has said, remember there's a career path in the NPA. You can be one of our NDPPs in the future. And good luck.
From my side, good luck, and please make sure that you provide us with full comprehensive information as per stipulations onto the advert to make it easy for the selection process, so that we do consider the right people, so that ultimately we have an NDPP out of all of you. But thank you and good luck.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you very much to everybody who attended this presentation today. We hope it has been useful, and good luck with your applications. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Goodbye.